following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Okay.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am indeed comfortably zoned in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland. I have the birthday boy today, Alan Blumkin. Pittsburgh, I would say fanatic, but you're a Yankee fan too, so the fanaticism goes both ways, and you've been the heart and soul of the Comfortably Zoned Network for like 3 years now. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And congratulations on celebrating another birthday. What are you, 39, 38?
39 plus 37.
Oh, okay. I got you. Good to talk to you. I hope you're getting along. How's New York these days?
Still here.
Okay.
Our idiot mayor is in Nevada, wasting his time running for the presidency. All right.
Okay. That is not going to happen from what I understand. But they have 20 more candidates to choose from. It's not as if they're not split enough.
No, he has as much chance of getting elected as I do.
Right. Alan, you're a Pirate fan. We did part one of this a few weeks ago when we kind of went around the horn talking about that 1960 team. Before we do that, I want to talk about another anniversary of Pirate fame, I guess. Harvey Haddock's 1959. Want to talk about that a little bit, Alan?
Yeah, well, one of the ironies is I woke up the next day to go to school, and my mother had the radio on, and I come across with the sports news, and one of the things I wanted was a Pirate win. So they start off with the story. Harvey Haddock's last night pitched 12 perfect game for 12 innings. So I said, yeah, and they said, and lost it in the 13th. Okay. That was very deflating. He went out there, supposedly it was not the nicest night in the world, and he was matched up against Lou Burdett of the Braves. And he pitched 12 perfect innings. It's 36 batters up, 36 batters down. And the Pirates couldn't score. They wound up with 12 hits in the game. So in the 13th, Don Hoke makes an error on the first batter. He gets to second and intentionally walks Henry Aaron. And Adcock comes up with one out. Adcock hits a ball that clears the fences there apparently it was a 3-run homer. But however, when Adcock started running the bases, he ran with his head down, and Henry Aaron had stopped when he saw the ball go over the fence. Adcock passed Aaron, and I thought the final score after that should have been 2-0, but somehow they decided to make it 1-0. But this is the furthest that anybody had pitched a perfect game in the history of baseball, which still stands. And
Haddock was with them.
Haddock came over in 1959 with Don Hoke and Smokey Burgess when the Pirates had sent Frank Thomas to the Reds with 3 lesser lights.
Right. We forget what a slugger Frank Thomas was.
Yeah, he had a terrific year in 1958, but the Pirate management saw they could fill a couple of holes with Burgess, Haddocks, and Hoke, and so they made the trade.
Okay. Alan, let me ask you, was Branch Rickey as vitally involved in building the Pirate team championship?
Well, some of them he did sign. We went over the thing with Clemente last week. He also drafted Elroy Face out of the Dodgers organization, which not too many people know about. He signed Dick Rose, a bonus baby, and he signed Bill Mazeroski and Bob Skinner, who came up through the farm system. Mazeroski
was
came.
responsible for the Burgess trade?
No,
because
that was Joe L. Brown, who was the general manager for about 10 years and was the son of the comedian Joe E. Brown.
Right, Joey Brown was very famous. He played a drunk, mostly.
Yeah, so Ricky's term as GM, Ricky retired after 1955, and Joe Brown came in as general manager, for the next bunch of years, 10, 15, 12 years as general manager. And but some of the guys, Vernon Law was signed as a bonus baby before Branch Rickey came, and Bob Friend was in the Pirate system before Branch Rickey came there.
Okay. Did Ricky stay on after he retired in 55?
No.
Did he stay on as a consultant at all?
No, not at all.
Okay.
He stayed out until he was hired as a consultant by August Bush of the Cardinals in 1964, and that created a whole chaotic situation there.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Branch Rickey, between his Pirates role and his Cardinal role, came up with something that really led to expansion.
The Continental League.
Right.
Yeah, which had...
just a little experience of what that was about.
Yeah, basically, he's trying to set that up because of the Dodgers and Giants moving out of New York, and he thought there was room for two teams, so he established something called the Continental League that had 8 teams, and basically it forced the hands of the major leagues to expand.
Okay.
So the National League announced that in 1962. They announced this in 1960. That in 1962 they would expand into New York, which became the Mets, and Houston, which is now the Astros. And the American League, for whatever reasons, decided to go in a year earlier, in 1961, and they authorized the move of the existing Washington Senators to Minnesota, where they became the Twins. They brought in a new franchise in Washington, which is now the Texas Rangers, and they brought in the Angels in Los Angeles.
Okay. The one thing about expansion that a lot of people don't know is that twixt the time that the Angels got to draft and the next year when the National League teams got to draft, the Mets and Houston, there were changes in the rules.
Yeah, the American League set up, I think, a freeze of 50 players. And then they had some pretty good players like Dee Chance and Bob Rogers and Jim Fregosi made available, through the American League expansion draft. The National League saw that and they said, we're not giving up any prospects. So they put they made certain rules, and they were able to put basically non-prospects and marginal major leaguers or over-the-hill major leaguers who were going to release anyway. Just why should we release Roadblock Jones, for example, while we can put him up in the expansion draft and get paid $40,000, $50,000 for him? This is what the National League did, and both Houston and the Mets were disgusted with what the player pool was when that expansion draft came along.
Yeah, I do remember that we were sold kind of a bill of goods on how good, as Met fans, future Met fans, how good Felix Mantilla, Elio Chacon, these guys were.
Well, that's why they brought in Casey Stengel to manage, because they felt he would distract the fans from the fact that the team was as bad as it was.
Okay. Well,
and it got to be a cult. 1962 Mets became a cult.
Yes, I remember it well. I think it was Leonard Cobbett said, it hurts too much to watch, but I can't stop.
That's the team that Jimmy Breslin wrote about, a book about can anybody here play this game.
Right.
And there was a story I learned recently because they brought Gene Woodling in from Washington toward the end of that season, and 1962, when Woodling is 40 years old. He's sitting in the dugout next to Casey, and Casey turns to him and says, "This ain't like the old days, is it?"
It was dramatically different than the old days.
But they drew, playing at the decrepit Polo Grounds, they drew almost 1 million, and they became cult. And
I think they outdrew the Yankees, as a matter of fact.
No, not quite, but they came close.
Okay.
They may have, they did outdraw the Yankees a couple of times during the early 60s. But one of the things that they came out and they sold out the Polo Grounds for the times that the Dodgers and Giants came in. In those days, it was 18 in the division. No, I'm sorry, they play each other 18 times. So the Dodgers and Giants would come in 3 times a year. And they packed them every time, especially when the Giants came in with Willie Mays.
I think you'll agree that rivalry is right up there with the Red Sox-Yankee rivalry.
But the Dodger-Giants?
Dodgers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
If not surpassing. And there was no real replacement of the Giants and Dodgers by the Mets. It was just...
Because the Mets and Yankees play in different leagues.
Yeah, the substitution more than that. There was nothing recaptured for the fans, the excitement of the Giants and Dodgers.
Yeah, well, there were also, in the 4 years that the Yankees were, between 1958 and 1961, that they were in there by themselves in New York, their attendance did not grow appreciably. In 1961, with that super team with the... not only them winning 109 games, but the whole Maris Mantle chase of Babe Ruth, they only drew 1,747,000.
Right,
of which I was 4.
Pictures of Maris's last home run.
Yeah, 23,000 there. I would have been there, but I was in Pittsburgh for my sophomore year.
Right.
In fact, I was in Forbes Field for the last game there when Maris hit the home run. It was announced over the loudspeaker there.
Okay.
But
let's continue our around.
Yeah, but one last
analyst.
point is that 99% of the Dodger and Giant fans could not bring themselves to root for the Yankees.
I was included in that.
Yeah.
I worshipped the players and hated the team.
Yeah.
Guys like Yogi and Mickey and Skowron and this, that, and the other thing. I love those guys, but I wanted them to lose. It was really crazy.
Well, it's not so crazy because I hated the Dodgers back then.
Right.
And
you respected the play.
The older I got, the more and more I respected the players.
Mm-hmm. And
their history.
Yeah. I miss them. Guys like Gilliam and Snyder and all this. I miss them as much as I do the Giants who have passed away. Because without the Giants, without the Dodgers, the Giants' memories would not be what they were.
No.
I mean, of course, you can talk about Bobby Thompson shot heard around the world, but there was so much more to that rivalry. And we're digressing from the Pirates a little bit, but I think what made that rivalry go right from the start was Leo DeRocher being the Dodger manager, and all of a sudden we look up and he's managing the Giants.
Well, it went way back because they were rivals in the latter part of the 19th century. And then in the 1900s, in 1903, John McGraw became the manager of the Giants. And one of his longtime aides was Wilbert Robinson. And they got into a dispute in around 1911, 1912. And Robinson left the Giants, and he went to manage the Dodgers.
Right.
So, of course,
I didn't realize. I didn't know that.
So by that point, Wilbur Robinson and McGraw had developed a real hatred for each other. And it really took off from there. And then the whole thing, which when DeRocha went in 1948 from the Dodgers to the Giants, that was a culmination. And we've gone on to a large extent had they not moved. It would have continued, yeah. Same league, playing each other 18, 20 times a year, it would have maintained itself.
Okay, did McGraw take over the Giants managership from Robinson?
No, he went when the Baltimore Orioles in the National League folded after 1899. Baltimore took a franchise in the American League, and he went with that. And Ben Johnson, who ran the American League for years and founded it, had issued a code of conduct, towards umpires and towards everything. McGraw did not follow the code of conduct. So Ben Johnson was suspending and fining him in 1902 every other day. So finally, he was either contacted or was contacted by the Giants owner and says, "We want you to come here." And McGraw said, "I'll be more than happy to get out of the American League."
Oh.
So he left Baltimore and took over the Giants job in late 1902 and stayed there until he was too ill in 1932.
Wow.
And the Baltimore team in the American League folded after 1902 and became the Yankees.
They were the Highlanders.
Highlanders, yeah. But he never managed the Highlanders, yeah.
Okay. Alan, let's continue the Around the Horn conversation we were having on the 60 Pirates.
Let's go to the outfield first, and then we'll discuss the pitchers. The left fielder was Bob Skinner, who had come up through the Pirates system and turned out to be a decent enough fielder and a decent enough hitter. He hit over 300 a couple of times. He didn't have much power, but he was reliable.
Good pinch hitter, too.
Yeah, later on, yeah. And in fact, the outfield stayed together from 1956, when Bill Verdon came over from the Cardinals, until Skinner was traded to Cincinnati in 1963. They were together for a long time.
Yeah. And they were very underrated. There was some great outfields in the National League at that time.
Yeah. They got Bill Verdon in a steal. Verdon came up with the Cardinals. He was originally Yankee property, and he was sent to the Cardinals when the Yankees got Slaughter right before 1954 season. But Verdon never played a game for the Yankees. So he went to the Cardinals and became National League Rookie of the Year in 1955. And he got off to a relatively slow start in 1956. And Frank Lane, who was running the Cardinals at the time, basically had no patience. So in May 1956, he offered Verdon to the Pirates. And the Pirates said, "Okay, what do you want?" And he wanted Bobby Del Greco, who was a bonus baby in 1952 and was a very good fielder but couldn't hit the sides of his hat.
Right.
And
Bobby Del Greco was like Jim Pisoni, the Yankees.
Yeah, he was he was one of those players that a good no-hit was described for.
Right.
And the other player they gave up was a pitcher named Dick Littlefield, who is one of my favorite subjects. He played for 10 teams in 9 years, and he was traded more often. He was traded like a pack of baseball cards. Every year
he was traded in a very significant trade.
He was traded to the Cardinals, and the Cardinals were so thrilled with him that they sent him to the Giants a month later in the Alvin Dark Red Shanings trade. The Giants were so enamored with him that they tried to send him to the Dodgers in the Jackie Robinson trade, which it was void when Jackie Robinson retired. And then they were so thrilled at keeping him that a couple of months later they sent him to the Cubs. If he was playing today, he would be a one of these one-out left-handed specialists.
Well, who was it that just retired? It was Jackson with the A's.
No, he got sent to Toronto. He got his brains beaten in yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
14
teams?
14 teams, yeah. 104 and 123 record before he came to Toronto. He's 1-1. The Padres got 19 runs against Toronto yesterday, including 7 home runs, and Jackson started that game.
Was Verdon as good as any in center field?
Yeah, he was a terrific defensive player. In fact, if you look at the play-by-play of the 1960 World Series, you find not only was Verdon involved in several tremendous defensive plays, but he was involved in a lot of the key offensive plays, a series of plays that gave him the championship. I didn't realize this. I learned this when I was prepping my Dick Road interview in 1985.
Okay.
And Verdon hit the ball that hit Tony Kubek in the throat. He hit a home run that was very vital. He made base running situations that were very vital. He was a very good all-around player. I mean, you're not going to put him in the same league with Willie Mays or Henry Aaron or any of those superstars, but he was a very, very good, solid player.
Good. Clemente, is there anything that can be said?
No, well, basically in 1960, he was on his sixth season. He was the ripe old age of 26. And he had a good year in 1960 at over 300, drove 94 runs. But he really started peaking in 1961. He made a quantum leap. Okay. And that's when he became, during the 60s is when, in the 70s, before he got killed in that plane crash, this is where he became the Clemente we all remember.
I hearken back to all the All-Star games in that era where the National League had Clemente, Mays, Aaron, Frank Robinson, Kurt Flood, Vada Pinson, Verdon, all these guys that were so great. It truthfully was the golden age of baseball.
Yeah, and they won them all. The National League won all those All-Star games back then.
And when they meant something to the league and something to the individual players, the presidents of the National League and American League would come by and give pep talks to the team before going out there. It was they played competitive ball. Guys stayed in for a long time. Starters would stay in. Some would complete the game. And managers wanted to win. There was none of this crap like if it's a tie score, we call it off, that kind of thing.
Yeah, before World War II, the American League was dominant. And there's a story that when they won the 1942 All-Star game, McCarthy is a push-button manager, Joe McCarthy. So when they got to the 1943 All-Star game, admittedly by that time a lot of the superstars were in the military service. McCarthy didn't play a Yankee in that All-Star game. They still beat the National League.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That is. Let's talk about the Pirate pitching.
Oh, yeah, one more outfielder I have to mention. Gino Cimoli, who was essentially the platoon. He was basically a relief for Skinner and sometimes Verdon when they wanted to give them a day off. They had gotten him from the Cardinals before that season, and he also contributed somewhat. He got the hit that started the bottom of the eighth inning in the seventh game.
Pitching a former Dodger.
Former Dodger, yeah. In fact, the Dodgers got Wally Moon for him after 1958. Wally Moon
led them to a
Wally Moon had
figured baseball park with the big screen.
Yeah, with the moonshots, and what Wally Moon had several really good years with the Dodgers, but after they moved out, he had a great year in 1961, which is the last year they were in the Coliseum, and his numbers went down when they moved to Dodger Stadium.
Right. He was a pretty good outfielder with the Cardinals before that.
He had one bad year, and they shipped him. They shipped him to the Dodgers.
Right. Okay, let's start at the top. Vernon Law.
Vernon Law came to the Pirates as a bonus baby. Vernon Law is a Mormon, and he's from Idaho originally. And the word got out that he was pretty good, and so they came after him. And he signed the contract because his mother, who was reluctant to let him go, got a call from Bing Crosby.
Got a call from who? I'm sorry.
Bing Crosby.
Oh, really?
Who was a part owner of the Pirates back then.
Right.
Yeah, she flipped out over that and said, "Okay, you're going to take good care of my boy." So he went to the Pirates, played 1 or 2 years in the minors, came up in 1950 at the age of 20, and was moved right into the rotation, which in those days wasn't very much.
Yeah. See, and we all remember how good Bing Crosby was with kids.
Yeah. When they were not his. Yeah.
They were not his. He was fine with kids who were not his. Gary, on the other hand, was a punching bag, as were the other kids. He was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, it turns out. But when Bing Crosby owned a part of the Pirates, Bob Hope owned a part of the Cleveland Indians.
Exactly, yeah.
And that kind of thing got a lot of publicity.
Oh, yeah.
When baseball was truly the national pastime.
Yeah, because they did all those road movies together.
Right. And a lot of spring training shots with Crosby. I saw one on Facebook the other day where he was behind the plate with the catching gear, and what have you. It was just a fine time to grow up and be a baseball fan.
So anyway, Vernon Law spent 1952 and 1953 in the Army. Came back out in 1954, and he was part of the rotation. I mean, he had a couple of bad years because the team was bad. Finally, in 1958, he started to turn it around. He won 14 games that year, and the next year he won 18. In 1959, he was 18-9, and one of the better pitchers in the National League. And 1960, he became the first 20-game winner in 2 years for them. He was basically the stopper. He broke all the short losing streaks that they had, and he pitched well enough to win the Cy Young Award, which in those days was only awarded to one pitcher in one league. In the majors, there was no separate league Cy Young Awards until 1967. And when it got to what happened to him was in the celebration of the night when they clinched the pennant, there was a lot of horseplay going on, and he felt his ankle get pulled by some. I think it was, he mentioned either Don Hoke or Bob Oldis is the one who did it. And his ankle was bad. And he pitched, he started games 1, 4, and 7 for the Pirates. Three games which they won. But he couldn't really go more than 5-6 innings in any of them. In the last game, he had to come out after 4 innings, and they brought in Elroy Face, who proceeded to give up a 3-run home run to Yogi Berra in the 5th inning. But what that ankle injury did was essentially ruin his career for the next 3 seasons. He couldn't fit. He was 3-4 in 1961, and after very early in the season, he was shut down for the season because his motion, almost like Dizzy Dean's motion, was not the same.
Yeah, one compensates for.
Yeah, and finally in 1964-65, he came back for a couple of very good years before he retired. He's 89 years old now, and he lives in I think he lives in Utah, all right, either Utah or Idaho. He has a son.
Him the deacon. Was
the deacon, right? Yeah, because he was an elder in the Mormon. He's an elder in the Mormon Church.
Oh, okay.
And he had a son, Vance, that had a fairly decent major league career with various teams. In fact, Vance was with Montreal in 1 year, I think it was 1985, and he was the star of the game for Montreal. So he came out to Kiner's Corner. This was the post-game show that Ralph Kiner had on, and Ralph Kiner, in his usual way, called him for the whole interview. He called him Vance. He called him Vernon, excuse me. Okay. And then when the interview ended, he says, "Please go home and when you go home, give my regards to your father, Vance." It was a classic Kiner interview. But Vernon Law retired in 1967 with a 162 and 147 lifetime record, which, considering what it was before 1957, he pitched very, very well the rest of his career.
Right.
The second banana was,
I was just going to say the second in that rotation
was Bob Friend, who just passed away a couple of months ago at age 88. Bob Friend was a workhorse. He came up in 1951, moved right into the rotation, was there until they shipped him to the Yankees in before the 1966 season. He worked, never came down with a bad arm. He worked tremendous number of innings. He wound up with 197 wins and 230 losses, which is the most losses by a non-200 game winner.
Oh, really?
In history. Oh, yeah. He had some really bad years in there. He won the first achieved notice when he won the National League ERA title in 1955 with the last place team, and then in 1958 he has a big year when he won 22 and 14. It's the only time he ever won 20 games. But that winter he let himself get totally out of shape, and he came back in 1959 and lost his first 7 starts and wound up the year 8 and 19.
Wow.
So in 1960 he rebounded. He was 18 and 12 and pitched very, very well. When he got to the World Series, the Yankees just creamed him. They creamed him in Game 2 when they won 16-3. They creamed him in Game 6 when they won 12-0. And then Murtaugh brought him in at the top of the 9th inning in Game 7, and he couldn't get anybody out. And then they brought in Haddix to relieve him.
Well, let's face it, those Yankees were a buzzsaw.
Yeah, yeah. The only 3 effective pitchers of the Pirates had in that whole World Series were Vernon Law, Harvey Haddix, and Elroy Face. That was it.
Right.
Yeah, and Haddix was the 3rd starter, and he won 12 games because Harvey Haddix said when he was with the Cardinals, and a 20-game season his rookie year, hurt his knee in pretty badly in 1954, and he didn't have the stamina anymore.
Okay.
And then,
we talked about him in that famous Adcock game.
Yeah, and the fourth starter they acquired from the Cardinals in June of 1960 was Vinegar Ben Mizell. They gave up Julian Javier in the trade, who became the Cardinal regular second baseman for the next 10 years. But
he was a very underrated good ball player.
But there was no way Julian Javier was going to beat up Bill Mazeroski.
No question.
So he became expendable.
Was he really the best fielding second baseman of his generation? Was there anybody close? His
nickname was No Touch.
Right, because of how it appeared he wasn't touching the ball on the double play.
He turned the ball over so fast on double plays that and he had all sorts of records for double plays, for accepted chances, for all of this stuff, range factor. And as I mentioned before, people who denigrate his Hall of Fame membership should take a look at the offensive numbers of, among others, Louis Aparicio, Ozzie Smith, and you can throw in Rizzuto and Reese, who are not exactly offensive juggernauts, and they're in there because of their defensive prowess at shortstop.
Alan, you taught me and our audience something about statistics, about defensive statistics that sticks in my mind and is very interesting. If those statistics, like range factor, if a guy just doesn't get enough balls hit to him, for instance, there are pitching staffs that are known as fly ball pitchers.
Yeah, I mentioned one time earlier, in the mid-'50s, Richie Ashburn was leading the National League in center field putouts every year. Ahead of Willie Mays and ahead of Duke Snyder, because he had pitchers that threw fly ball pitches.
Right. So you have to take those stats.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Ashburn was a terrific center fielder.
Yeah, he hadn't his arm was not that strong. And one of the comparisons I use about fielding, you get to first base. I mean, Ted Kluszewski used to lead the league in percentage every year because he couldn't move. Mm-hmm. And Gil Hodges, had tremendous movement and would make plays at, especially on things that turned into base hits when Kluszewski was playing first base because Kluszewski couldn't get there.
Right, but it appeared that Kluszewski, his fielding percentage was higher.
It was higher
he
because
wasn't trying. He had no range.
No, they had no range.
Right.
So to me, fielding is essentially it's an eye thing. It's an eyeball. So when you talk about great fielders, you talk about eyeballs. You talk about, I saw this guy play for 10 years and he could do everything out there. Like Keith Hernandez, who was a tremendous first baseman. Don Mattingly, who was a tremendous first baseman. You can go to any position like that. Dick Grohl told me.
Eyeballs help because I'm eyeballing this kid on Colorado who just hit his 200th home run.
100th home run. Story?
Arriato?
Arenado, he's a third baseman, yeah.
Right, I think
he can hit. He can play third base and he can hit.
Oh, God, he's a great defensive third baseman. And there's a classmate on his, I think he was a few years behind him in growing up. His name is Chapman, and he plays third base.
The A's, Matt Chapman?
Oh, right, almost as well as Arrieta. These guys are unreal, and we grew up with the Boyers, Bobby Cox's,
Eddie Matthews, Eddie Matthews, Ron Santo, Al Rosen. Rosen and Matthews made themselves into fielders because neither of them were great when they came up originally. And Dick Grohl told me, I asked him about fielding. He says Dick Grohl said that he had no speed. That's why he did hit and run a lot, and that's why he made his business to know every hitter in the league so he could position himself properly. There were others like that in those days, like Lou Boudreau and Alvin Dark, who were not, didn't have very great foot speed, but they knew where to play everybody.
Right. Dark is underrated.
I know, very underrated. A lot of people, hate him because of the racism, but he was a tremendous ball player.
Right. And if you talk to Willie Mays, and he's still with us, he will tell you that Dark did more for his early career than almost anybody. That part of the racism was just where
he was brought up in Louisiana.
Right.
In the 1940s.
What with Pee Wee Reese being brought up in Lexington, Kentucky.
Louisville. He's from Louisville.
Or Louisville.
Yeah.
Louisville. And the way he handled his humanity, so to speak, in relationship to bring in Jackie in and how he helped him so much, I can't really cut that much slack to Alvin Dark,
Well, the main politician when Alvin Duck was young. He was 13 when Huey Long was assassinated, and as bad as Huey Long might have been, his successors were worse.
Right.
So he grew up in that particular, and he was a very devout Baptist.
Alvin Dark.
Yeah.
Would you agree that if Rizzuto and Reese are in the Hall of Fame, and they are, that either they shouldn't be or Dark should be?
I think you could, with them in, you can make a case for Dark. As I've said a million times, one of the problems with the Hall of Fame is when they put somebody in like that. Or my big beef, when they put in last year, when they put in Harold Baines, you're opening it up to an awful lot of other players of that caliber that don't particularly belong.
Right. Alan.
And one more. I just want to go for one more picture, because the rest of it.
And then I want to talk about that Danny Murtaugh before you close.
Okay. I mean, Clem LeBlanc was on the team, but Clem was at the end of his rope there, and he became one of the few, because he was on the Dodgers in '59. Became one of the few players who played on two consecutive World Championship teams who were different. The other pitcher I want to mention is Elroy Face. Elroy Face came up in 1953, being drafted out of the Dodger system, where he was a starter. And he was a starter for the 1953 Pirates, who were pretty bad. They sent him down in 1954, and he came back up in 1955. And in 1956, he was still starting, and toward the end of that year, they made him into a reliever, and became one of the best, maybe if not the best reliever in the National League for the next decade.
Right.
And when he went 18-1 in 1959, they would bring him into a lot of tie games.
As you and I learned on these airwaves from David Finoli, and maybe you knew it before, Elroy Face, or Leroy Face, depending on...
Elroy.
Leroy was the character in William Bendix's show.
Yeah.
That he played the kid. William Bendix, Leroy.
Leroy's the real first name of Satchel Paige.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and that's interesting. That's a show in itself, Satchel Paige. But on the other hand, we're going to get to my last statement on Face was that he wasn't a supporter, and I'm putting this in quotes, of Clemente. He gave him a very, very hard time. So
yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know some of my people reported when his reaction to when he found out about the Clemente plane crash was better him than me.
Yeah, nice
guy. But he's now 91. Apparently, some of the things I've read on Facebook about him, that he's mellowed somewhat. In fact, I suggested when the Pirate relief pitchers, Pirates this year went through an 18-game winning streak where the bullpen blew most of the games. I said he's 91. He could probably still pitch better than some of these clowns that they're sending out there now.
For sure.
Yeah, but sure. He was known as the Baron. And Danny Murtaugh would signal for him by putting his hand on his waist. Murtaugh would put his hand on his own waist and move the hand off, meaning bring me the little guy. And he threw a forkball, and he relieved in all four of the Pirate wins very effectively in the first three, not so effectively in the last game.
Yeah. I want to talk about that last game for just a second with you. It was Casey Stengel's habit when he was that 60 Yankee team of in late innings when they had a lead, he would replace Kubek at short with Joe DeMaestri, a better fielder. He'd put Kubek in left to replace Yogi Berra. And he did that most of the time when they had a lead. In this particular game, the one that the ground ball hit Kubek in the throat, he shouldn't have been in there. DeMaestri should have been playing shortstop.
Well, basically, Forbes Field was notorious for having a very hard infield.
Right.
And the ball, maybe DeMaestri would have charged the ball earlier, but once the ball hit whatever, the hole or the rock or whatever was out there, it was too late.
Yeah.
But if you could look at
how that would have changed things. That's all.
You look at the Game 6 of the 1986 World Series when John McNamara, the Red Sox manager, would put in a play named Dave Stapleton to play first base for Bill Buckner, and he didn't do it because he wanted Buckner out in the field when they won the series, and that didn't quite work out that way.
No. And I think Mookie Wilson would have beaten that out if he fielded it cleanly.
Well, that remains to be seen.
Yes, or remains to never be seen. Tell us about Danny Murtaugh.
Danny, I asked Dick Grote when I interviewed him about Murtaugh, and I said specifically, Mr. Grote, I said, how did Danny Murtaugh handle the clubhouse after they got you guys got clobbered in game 2 and 3 because they lost 16-3 and 10-0 in those 2 games? And he said, they're not paying us on runs. We're down 2 games to 1.
Right.
And I said, just go out there and play how you normally play, and we'll be all right. And Murtaugh was very, very. He looked like he was extremely easygoing, but he was very strict on fundamentals, what Dick Grote called the ABC plays. You had to know what you were doing out there, or else he would bench you. But he was an explainer. He explained moves to his players away from, never yelled at them in the clubhouse or anything after a game. He would take the player in his office and explain to the pitcher why he took him out, or the batter why he pinch hit for him. And he never made his players feel anything or any resentment against him in public.
Right.
And he knew, he had apprenticed in the minor leagues for 4 years after, 4 or 5 years after he retired as an active player before he took over the Pirates job in late 1957. So he had the managerial experience, and he was known as the Smiling Irishman. But he
was in reality a serious guy.
Yeah, Dick Grote told me that the players all loved him. And of course, when he came back to manage the Pirates in 1970 and the early 70s, he managed them in 70, 71, and 72. In September 1971, he was the first manager ever to send out a lineup with no white players.
Oh, wow!
There were blacks and Latins. The 9 players were black or Latin. And they asked him about that afterwards. He says, I didn't even realize that. He
didn't realize that is a good thing.
He never saw color.
Yeah.
Never. DeRocha was
that's a good thing we should remember Danny Murtaugh on.
DeRocha was like that, too, because DeRocha may have been the biggest son of a bitch that ever lived, but he never saw color. So the only thing he cared about was, can the guy help me win?
Yeah. And speaking of future shows, Leo DeRocha should be a future show. One of the most eclectic human beings. Not eclectic, complicated is the word I'm looking for.
How much do you know about Clint Hartung?
About who?
Clint Hartung.
Clint Hartung had a fight with
basically
that was a different Clint.
Clint Courtney. Clint Hartung. Let me give you a couple of minutes
Clint
on this.
Was both an outfielder and a pitcher.
Yeah, he came. I did a profile on him for one of the Facebook groups I'm in yesterday.
Oh wow! I'm going to read that.
They put down Remember, and it's a group called Baseball University, Sweet 16. It's everything before the first expansion. And so Jim Hallow puts out Remember So-and-so. So one of the ones he had yesterday was Remember Clint Hartung. Clint Hartung was a superstar world player in the military during World War II. And he comes out of the Army and signs with the Giants. And he says this guy was the greatest prospect that Dick Young wrote that says he should go right to Cooperstown without having to play a game. So the Giants signed him.
Sarcastically.
The Giants signed him as a combination pitcher and outfielder. He pitched the first in 1947. He pitched through 1950, wound up with a 29 record and an ERA of just over 5.
Not good in those days. Today they'll get you a 5-year contract.
Yeah, and as an outfielder, he lasted a couple more years as an outfielder, and he hit .238 and had an on-base average of .285.
And played on that 1951.
And his claim to fame was that when Don Mueller broke his ankle, sliding at the third base on Whitey Lockman's double, Hartung was sent in to run for him.
Right. And in the World Series, when Mueller couldn't play, they put Hank Thompson.
Out there. There's the old black outfield. Yeah.
This was the first time 3 blacks played in the outfield in the World Series. Might have been the first time 3 blacks played in one outfield at all. Remember, this is 51, just 3 short years after.
4 short years after Robinson. Clint Hartung went 0 for 4 in the World Series, primarily as a pinch hitter.
Right.
But this guy was supposed to be his greatest prospect ever, and he's the only thing that anybody remembers him for is running for Mueller. And they asked DeRocha why he sent Hartung in. He said, because I was afraid that if the Dodgers won, there'd be a riot here, and Hartung was the biggest guy I had left.
Good. He'd stand by him. That's how Leo was. He'd stand behind the big guy.
Yeah.
Hold the big guy's coat.
Okay.
Okay. We are complete with one of the best Al Blumkin offerings on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And I'm honored that you're a part of it, and I'm thrilled that, more than that, you're my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for the birthday wishes, and thank Tally for the birthday wishes. And
yes.
And this is a highlight.
Talking ball is a good way to spend your birthday.
Okay, thank you very much.
Spend many more birthdays talking ball, Al Blumkin.
Okay, I plan on it. Bye-bye.
Thanks again. Thanks for listening, everybody. Another good one. Adios. The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.